if you are speaking, yes, and another level if you are writing books, yes, but of course they didn't like him, yes, they didn't like him. So he is more or less not ignored, but it's clear. And we are here in Iran and speaking about Bada. That's the word. Yes. No, it's good that we have the possibility to show that and to see that. Did you understand? No.
No.
Let us, yes, because it's difficult. Therefore, let us discuss and ask and answer.
Yeah, I was thinking before we go to number 3,
yes,
we could have a discussion and have a break and then come back.
Wonderful, yes.
Yes, I would raise a question. I think, unfortunately, I couldn't pick up the answer that you gave about the science. But let me put it again.
Yes, that was not a real answer. I stopped this.
And the other question is, if, okay, for example, as we say that, man has, according to Descartes, man has decided to constitute his own knowledge as well as himself and everything.
Yeah, that's a great illusion, of course. Yes.
Yes. So, okay, illusion. But it would raise, if we negate that, it would raise a number of questions, and primarily it would raise the notion of freedom. How would we be able to explain or explicate the notion of la libération or the freedom, and if if we cannot, there is no possibility of freedom then if we negate that. So are we, rejecting, Westerns as values, their fundamental values?
Are there values?
Humanism?
Are there values? Yes. That's the best values. That's something new for me. No, let's begin with techniques, with technology. We are in a modern society. The traditional societies and the old Islamic countries were more or less Islamic traditional societies, and the Chinese Empire too. They knew the balance between heaven and earth, yes? And their science was not to rediscover to be ambitious, but in the balance. And it was allowed, knowledge was allowed and to do that, not limited, yes? But it was in a balance between heaven, to speak Chinese, between heaven and earth. Yes, and now we don't have this balance. We went too far and we can go back. Yes? So we lost the balance, we lost the center. In art, we can say the center. Please.
To answer your question about technology,
he's a friend of technology because he has many mobiles.
I explained it correctly as I'm not that familiar with it. But even in the classical sense, there was a division of the sciences.
Yeah.
And so, depending on what framework and what science you were working in, technological development was certainly part of its goal.
Yeah. Even in this Islamic society, we
yes.
have a lot of examples of that.
So I don't know. I think to say, if we adopt or readopt rather the classical metaphysics that Professor Pietsch is talking about, I don't think it negates technology, because you would just put technology within a different division, a different framework of the sciences. I think once technology began to be started to develop, they quickly abandoned classical view of knowledge because of all the progress they witnessed. And they forgot that there was actually a distinction early on. Progress development was possible within different frameworks of the sciences. But is that correct? I don't know.
Okay. My question was not, I think I could not articulate it. My question...
He has a mobile too, yeah.
Yes, sure.
I think he's a postmodernist.
But postmodernists do not deny the use of the mobile phone. Okay, what I think is, what my question was, that the possibility of the modern science becomes possible only when we come through the way of, Cartesian way, right? And, according to few, explanations, the priority of science over technology, or the other way around. Now, those who argue that science comes first and technology comes later, as it is the output of that.
Yeah.
And if science is not becoming possible without Cartesian method, that I think we are, in a very problematic situation. How to justify that? That was my question.
Modern technology, modern science begins in the 17th century, more or less. You know the case of Galileo Galilei, yes?
Yeah.
And you will be shocked what I will say. The church was right. The church was right from their cosmological understanding. The church was right. There is not a problem of heliocentric or geocentric, yes?
Exactly. I think the distinction between cosmologically the church was right doesn't mean that in this in the way Galileo was speaking, it was also correct. But also, in a sense, there was a forgetting of the distinction between cosmology and then how the world
That's
actually
the problem,
turns
yeah.
around. There could have been a distinction at that time, in which case Galileo would have had to frame his
Discovery
in a different way, I suppose.
If you study Husserl, for example, his last work, The Crisis of Modern Sciences and so on, he mentioned Galileo and Galilei, and he was not Catholic.
Can I have the last question from Rebecca? We'll have to break now, yeah?
Yes, after that.
It's just a quick comment that, about Galileo, in that this heliocentrism was actually possibly within the context of a movement that was trying to revive ancient Egyptian religions, which was seen as a threat to the Abrahamic religions. So possibly he may have been persecuted because he was seen as a deviant. His heliocentrism was seen as being deviant
I don't know
from.
that. I don't know
yeah,
that. No.
that was just one thing.
I don't know.
Okay,
this.
Yeah.
Okay, just a simple, it would be a very simple statement that I would love to know how that interpretation was, wrong in cosmology, because I don't know. So I think just after break we may begin with
Yes,
that.
yes. It's a new class of workers, proletarians, and he clicked back to care. And 13 years before Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, you are familiar with these names, declared their Communist Manifesto. Bader had published in Munich his treatise, it's a long Baroque title, about the actual relationship of the poor and proletarians towards the wealthy class, wherein he has given his suggestions according to integration of proletarians into society. It was indeed not dictatorship of the proletarians, but a wise integration of them into society. It was founded, of course, in his philosophy, and a part of his philosophy is social philosophy. With his ego, Descartes introduced the philosophy of the modern age, which is based on the self-sufficiency of human thinking and being, on being enough unto oneself and the founding of one's being and thinking. Owing to this self-sufficiency, man has no need of God's founding and assistance, neither in his existence nor in his knowledge or self-consciousness. For Bader, however, all those theories of knowledge and self-consciousness that emerge from the self-founding and autonomy of finite knowledge are amiss. Bader's analysis of the Cartesian cogito ergo sum of Descartes indicates that the I, the ego, when it reflects on where it comes from, will realize it does not have its cogito, its self-consciousness of its own accord. Upon closer reflection of the conditions of consciousness, one comes to know that finite consciousness knows itself as the consciousness of a person that does not bring itself forth, and neither does it know itself from itself alone. I can't know myself from myself alone. Clear, huh? Try it. Go in the morning to the bathroom, to the mirror. You will be not successful if we are using images. Probably you can find some images, definitely, in Mavlana Rumi. Finite consciousness knows itself as having been brought forth and sustained by another spirit. Finite consciousness knows its cogito, its I think, simultaneously as a cogitor, I am thought by God. The knowing of itself of finite being is not a primordial and solely unquestioned knowing upon which the foundation of knowledge can be erected. It rather stems from another consciousness. Finite consciousness is founded in an absolute consciousness which is completely independent of finite knowledge. Yeah? Finite consciousness, and we all have a finite consciousness. Yes?
That's important.
I beg your pardon?
Independent of finite knowledge.
Yes. Is completely independent of finite consciousness. Bader's cogitor principle depicts a fundamentally different outset of philosophy than Descartes' cogitor principle. For Bader, insight into the relatedness of finite and absolute consciousness and into the foundedness of finite consciousness in absolute consciousness comes first. For Bader, his cogitor principle expresses the tenet of the immanence of all things in God on the level of consciousness. That is, finite consciousness is founded in infinite, absolute consciousness and participates in it. Thomas Aquinas developed this process of participation. The cogitor principle further shows that man's knowledge is not made by man himself, but is bestowed on him by God. That is Bader's criticism of Descartes. I will show you now his criticism of the philosophy of Kant, Mr. Kant. In Bader's view, Kant's whole enterprise...
Can I ask questions before we continue to Kant?
Yeah.
Thank you for explaining Bader's criticism to Descartes. It's very, it's the first time I hear from the Western tongue, very, very precise criticism. But when you are explaining about Bader's cogitos principles, I remember explanations of Yusuf Swan when somebody asked him about constitutive elements of religious paranis. And he said one of the constitutive elements of religious paranis is metaphysical discernment. And somebody asked him, and how we can do metaphysical discernment, he said, the methodical support of it is meditation and invocation, zikrullah. And zikrullah, he said, we cannot remember...
But that's practice, yes? That's the realization.
No. According to Swan, the support, the method to be able to do metaphysical discernment is through invocation, through zikrullah. And he said that we cannot remember Allah or God unless He remember us first. He remember us first, ontologically speaking, he said. Okay, so going to Bader's criticisms to Descartes' cogito, I remember one of the prophetic traditions said, "Man arafa nafsahu faqad arafa rabbahu." Okay. I would like you to explain how Bader said that the weakness of cogito principles in Descartes is because it is foundeless. It has no foundation. But in my point of view, if Bader failed to explain the relation between the self-knowledge and how that God knowledge in ourselves and actually lead us to our knowledge to God and vice versa, and actually his philosophy or his cogitor principle, has no foundation either. Can you explain this for me?
But that's the first part of the criticism. We have to know Bardos, and that's 16 volumes. And I only showed now the criticism of Descartes, and now we have to read more and to know more. And after that, we can to try to answer your question. Yes, because with this, of course, that's a short explanation, and to answer, we have to know all. Yes. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I think Barder had also a foundation with the absolute. I mean, philosophically, he called it the absolute. Yes, I mean, it was God, right? I mean,
that of course, that is clear. But we are speaking here philosophically.
And you mentioned, you cannot remember God unless God remembers you.
Yes,
This is what this.
How to explain that God remember us first? Because not just wishful thinking that God.
No, God thinks us, if we can speak so. We are thought by God first.
Yes, how do we know that we are thought by Him?
No,
I think that
in Islamic philosophy, they mentions about the ilm al-huduri, they mentions about knowledge by presence, and these principles of epistemology really can explain precisely the relation between the mazkur and the zakir.
No. I think that first of all, Dr. Pietsch is suggesting that we wait until the end, because if this multifaceted approach of Badr may solve many problems first, and in the end, then in this multiplicity of ideas or criticism, then we may go to this kind of question. What you say, keep in your mind, please, I think your question is not a philosophical. Not. Your question is mystical, in that sense. What you say that we cannot have dhikrullah unless that God remember us is frequently manifested in the mystic text. For example, if you go to Hafiz, if I may read in Persian, دوست دارد سر سید دل حافظ دوست دارد سر سید دل حافظ یاران شاهبازی به شکار مگسی می آید. It is that eagle who wants to hunt an instinct, a mosquito. The mosquito cannot decide to be hunted by the eagle. The eagle should try to do that. And I think these are mystical images. But it would be interesting. We come back to it.
Ontologically, a short answer. You are a being. You are a human being. We are human beings.
Yeah,
we are existing.
Yeah,
we are existing. And our existence depends from God. And you can call that remembering and so on, but that's another aspect, yes.
But it is the job of philosophy to explain metaphysical truth.
Yeah, that is, but in a metaphysical language, not in a mystical language.
This is another thing. Philosophically, when you want to be remembered or you want to remember, both of them, you should be you. And the very fact of being you, the very fact of your being, depends of his, capital H, knowledge.
Yes, that's the ontological, metaphysical language.
But why do we have to have this split between languages?
We have many languages. We have many languages.
There didn't used to be.
No, that is important. Our time is intelligibility. Yes, intellectuality and spirituality, and there are both aspects. The aspect of doctrine, philosophically, metaphysically, and the other is the way.
But it didn't used to always be like this. It used to be mystical philosophy, used to be one.
That I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical of that. You can say that, but if you will think clear, don't mix the levels. Realize that what you understand. That is the theme here.
But this split between languages actually occurred precisely, with the whole Cartesian thing. Yeah. This split in this way of thinking.
We are here criticizing the roots of modern epistemology. Be clear. The roots of modern epistemology, that's our aim at the present, and not mystics. I take 2 tablets, after that I will fly. Mysticism. Well, against Kant, try to criticize Kant with mysticism. No possible. A true mystic said, what's that? We are here in the field of philosophy. Barthes' criticism of Kant. In Barthes' view, Kant's whole enterprise in the critique of pure reason was self-contradictory. How could Kant use reason itself as the tool to demonstrate that reason cannot reach actual knowledge of things as they really are? Question. How could Kant state that one cannot attain knowledge of the thing in itself, yet at the same time proceed to describe the thing in itself of the mind? It is the ultimate structure. Clearly, Kant's entire argument in the critique of pure reason has no foundation unless it can describe the mind as it truly is, not only in Kant's case, but also in everyone else's. If we only know the appearance of things, how can we know the mind in itself? Indeed, if we know the appearance, does it make any sense in the final analysis to say that we know anything at all? The reason for these contradictions, according to Barthes, lies in the fact that critical philosophy excluded the speculative knowledge of God and speculative religion from the realm of knowledge attained through reason. It is a philosophy of which it must be claimed, not misconceiving the goods it's done, that its main tendency was aimed at making our shallow-mindedness quite through stereotype. The demand for accepting knowledge through reason is speculative philosophy, and religion does not imply for Barthes that reason will recognize God without God. Yes? Barthes' program of speculative philosophy and religion in fact comprises the goal for knowledge through reason, which sees in God and thinks in God. What is to be light for me, or give light to me, as the one who seems or the one who senses is seeing, which in respect to me and without me is in existence as a complete and central seeing, into which my seeing is introduced, by seeing my eye, is introduced or inserted, and which thereby will have me partake of it as the seeing, by merging in my seeing, wherewith my seeing then is an image of the latter. To see God, therefore, is to see in God, that is, in God's primordial seeing. That is saying, here is a quotation even within this text of Meister Eckhart. And Barthes recovered him. Reason is in man, but it's not of man. For only one divine reason, the Logos, is the mutual and immediate center for each creaturely reason, and the latter is merely the continuance of the former, for the divine reason, which may under certain conditions be immanent in the latter, without, however, adopting itself to creaturely reason, which is why one has to say of the creature of reason that while there is reason within it, it is neither reasonable of itself, nor it is reasonable for itself as an end in itself. Religious knowledge is the knowledge in God's making himself known, because the eye through which God sees me is the same eye through which I see God. Well, that's the eye through which God sees me is the same eye through which I see God, as it is one and the same, knowing God and being known by God, and his like elicits my look in return. That is, again, a sentence by Meister Eckhart. Did you understand? Good. For, in fact, one has to say, God is reason, actually super reason. Man has it from God or is merely reasonable, participating in that reason, not being part of it. Just so as God is love, and man partakes of it or can partake of it. It is thereby clear for Bader that the thought of a self-assertion, of reason, and the thought of religious knowledge derived from mere reason are amiss. Kant has, as have in all his excesses, dealt man as death blow in forbidding him to strive for the supreme. That is the criticism, very short in the books. It is a long book. Now we will go to Hegel. That is a more complicated case. And Bader's criticism of Hegel passed through various stages. What Bader admired so much in Hegel was his logic and the power of his speculative mind. He was a great thinker, Hegel, and a great poet. His language is poetical. The translations are nothing comparing to his original text. Bader hailed Hegel's phenomenology of mind and science of logic as works of which the German nation could be proud of, and he paid his greatest respects to Hegel in the introduction to the first book of Fermenta Cognitionis. We have a French translation of the Fermenta Cognitionis, not English, where he praised Hegel as being responsible for a rebirth of philosophy. Bader wrote, that is important for all you, and in fact, since Hegel has lit the dialectical fire, the auto da fe of previous philosophy, once and for all, there is no way to success except through it, go through the fire. It is the person has to conduct himself and his works through this fire. He cannot prescind from it or even go so far as to ignore it. And Hegel wrote in the second edition of his Encyclopedia of Philosophical Science about Bader, and he's the only one who was mentioned in Hegel's work. He didn't mention other names, but he mentioned Bader's names. I must consider it desirable to see